Nadia had a good topic actually.
Yeah. Let's go with Nadia. So did you have something to talk about with evolution, Nadia?
Yeah, what I had was that there are a couple of friends of mine who are theistic evolutionists, Andy Jack and Fiona Robertson, who, well, have been, I hate to say harassed, but at least insulted by fundamentalists in various respects. And it's pretty nasty. Probably, I think a lot of people saw the, you know, case where Rancam went off on Fiona, but Andy's been getting heat for a while too. He recently, I guess, converted to theistic evolution. Um, it's pretty terrible the way things
Uh,
went about.
what
Literally
kind
using
of
words like prostituting for atheism and so on, and that's beyond the pale. Go ahead.
what kind of theistic evolution is it? The Ray Comfort kind of evolution, or the actual evolution?
I believe it's the actual evolution in both cases, and I don't know. I think supporting, you know, people who, even though they are believers and such, or at least have some grip on reality with science, um, is a pretty good thing. And well, kind of harassment and such they've been getting is you know, absolutely not justified. I mean, there's a doctrinal dispute. There are other ways to pursue it.
Mm. Yeah, I know a lot of people down here that believe in evolution get bastardized, and it only seems to make it worse when we stand up for them. But I think that um, we should find a way of standing up for them and making them, uh, you know, seem like good people anyway, and that their detractors look like, well, the ignorant people that they are.
Hi, Andy. We were saying how fundamentalists are attacking Christians who believe in theistic evolution.
Oh, hi Nadia again. I just left your hangout.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad to see. It's. I don't really want to get involved in the silly arguments of this. You have your own belief, and you stick with it. At the end of the day, I recently come over from being a young Earth creationist. Got sick and tired of the ongoing battle between evolution and creation, and I was taking my focus away from the most important thing, which is having faith in Christ and promoting Christ rather than trying to win arguments, hoping to try and bully someone into the kingdom, if you like, and it's just exactly not how it works. I've got my beliefs. Evolution seems to be in Scripture, backs it up, but also science would say that evolution's fact, and millions, if not billions, of years of fact as well. So there's plenty of time, and evolution works by adaptation. So put the two together, I think you come up with the right scenario. Put the three together, including the Bible, and you come up with the right scenario.
Huh. Is that a new trend on Christians to for them to say that the Bible supports evolution?
I think if you were to read um, Genesis 1, I think starting from about verse 15. Excuse me.
Well, the Catholic Church has accepted it for a long time now.
Which concordance? You won't find it in there. Well, you might do. I'll get my Geneva. Sorry about this. Okay, so. No, just bear with me a moment. It's a very small print, this Bible. Okay, so let's just start in. You can start in verse 20. I mean, it just gives an example. It is a bit before that, obviously. But it says God said, God spoke to the water, let the water bring forth in abundance every creeping thing that hath life, and let the fowl fly upon the air. So, God is speaking to the water. This is in the King James is probably a better version, perhaps. But it's where God's speaking to the ground, and you have grass coming from the ground. God doesn't make it with his own hands. Okay, he doesn't like do some magic or whatever, and then grass comes from the ground. God says to the ground, let it bring forth, grass. God speaks to the water, let it bring forth, fish and every living creature from the water. So how would one interpret that? Well, I suppose you could interpret, in several different ways. I interpret it through evolution. Then people will say to me, aha, yes, but it's got days, Andy, it's got days. On the first day God did this, on the second day God did that. Well, there's many different ways of interpreting days. If you go to your Strong's Concordance, look in 3117, I think it is, your Strong's Concordance, I might be wrong there. It actually gives you the description of the meaning of day. So it can mean, 24 hours or sunset to sunup. It can also mean an age. Okay, an age is a long time. And it can also mean perpetually. So I think, what's the best definition of age and perpetually in the Bible? I think it would go into Genesis myself personally. I think if you're looking for the meaning of a 24-hour day, that might be like the day of the Lord, accept, salvation this day and that kind of thing. But I think the word perpetually is another definition for yom, which is Hebrew for day, and I think that would attain and attach itself to the creation week. I think it's ages probably. I think science would definitely back this up through evolution, and also we know that the Earth is a lot older than 10,000 years.
Well, in terms of sort of justification, sort of within your faith, we're fine. Basically, however way you're doing it, in some ways it's your own domain, non-overlapping magisteria and all that. But a bigger question right now is, given the kind of insults that have been going around against you and Fiona, can we support you at all? If we can, is there a particular way we should? And because a lot of it, we see like, oh, if we support you, it sort of like taints your image as being associated with us, guilt by association. So that's what it kind of raises, I think.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, but I'm just giving you my slant on what I believe. I don't try and come on the internet to win debates or to try and preach people into the kingdom, because it's really not what I'm called to do. It's not what a believer is called to do. All we are supposed to do really is most important thing is to accept, to love one another, to build them up in hope, to give a reason for why we believe what we believe. It's as simple as that. It's just kind of planting seeds, around different souls, different hearts around the planet, and then you hope from that that God gives the increase, and then all we do is we just then move on. We just move on, not to get involved in silly arguments, as Paul the Apostle says. Don't get involved in silly arguments, because you know that these produce quarrels, and we mustn't be quarreling people. Christ people, the Lord's people mustn't be quarrelsome. We must be long-suffering and gentle and accepting and loving and all this kind of thing. And as soon as you start to get into the debates and arguments, you're raising yourself up, and then Christ all of a sudden is taking the back seats. Christ should firmly be in front, leading the way. And as soon as you start getting involved in these debates with evolutionists and atheists, you're simply raising Andy up rather than raising Christ up. And it's not what we ought to be doing.
Well, it's a little bit tricky though, because it's not, the atheists are actually kind of on your side on this one, right? So, go ahead.
I think to a certain extent, I've embraced. I'm not a learned person. I'm not a scientist. I've tried to argue hammer and tong for creationism, for the 6 days of creation. And when you've got geology, when you've got chemistry, when you've got biology, paleontology, astrophysics, and all these kind of things, they're all saying no, 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 no. And for myself, who's not a professor in any stretch of the imagination, to argue against people who've been to university and studied these things and worked on the back of other professional people as well, it's difficult for me to debunk them. Because at the end of the day, who am I? I'm only some low life from England. That's all I am, and I simply cannot, debunk professors and doctors and goodness knows what else, So I'm easy with this, I've embraced it. This is not the most important thing. This evolution debate for a lot of people is the most important thing. At the end of the day, the main thing is Christ and God. You've got to keep the main thing the main thing. If you go off on a tangent, you're going to miss the trick. You're going to miss it. Okay, when Christ comes back, he will say to some people, "Depart from me, you man of iniquity, because I never knew you." That's what he'll say to some people. And we've really got to try and embrace that understanding and get away from his arguments and focus on the main thing. Problem is, we don't see the main thing anymore. We see people getting involved in this creation debate because it stirs us up. As if you're going to win the argument anyway, and even if that's not going to guarantee anyone to believe. It's only by personal revelation and nothing else.
I hear what you're saying, but I somewhat disagree with you, because it really is an important subject, and it pulls the wolves over people's eyes, and you have to think about this. If kids are taught from the time that they're able to hold a book open and look at pictures and understand what they mean, to the time that they graduate from college, that they're just a product of pond scum, and that they don't have a creator,
can I just say something?
It leads people to turn away from any kind of idea about having a creator. It can be a very destructive thing to do to people's minds.
Yeah,
and so it is a very important
subject. Can I just say one thing briefly? Because I just want to point out, based on the feedback that I've been getting, we can do another evolution versus creationism thing, but if possible, I don't want to turn this into one today, because it wasn't structured, and we only have 2 hours. So if we start an evolution versus creationism thing, it's just going to go on and on.
I'm not trying to. I'm pointing out only that the subject isn't a very important one, because it points to origins, and that people base their entire worldview on what they believe, where they came from, how they got here, and what their purpose in this world is.
No. Okay. You could have the most ardent evolutionist and atheist. Okay. If that person was to have a revelation from God, okay, like I did, it would totally change your life around. It's only by revelation can you accept God. I
understand that.
It's not through arguing.
I agree with that.
Because arguing's only not going to produce much fruit at all. In fact, you'll probably do more damage and turn people away.
No, I disagree with that.
At the end of the day, just hear me out for a sec. I've got to go for it, so I've got to take the wife to work again. Even if you were to come up against, let's say, a big wig like Aaron Ra, okay, and you were to prove to him that evolution was false, it still does not guarantee that that person is going to accept God Christ. It's only by revelation. I myself have embraced.
I understand that. I understand that.
And I'm in a much better place now than I was
Mike.
this time 2 months ago. And there's my good friend Mark who's come on, a fantastic guy, and he's been very patient with me, and a lot of them have as well. I've got a lot to be thankful for, because I do believe that God has used these people to get me on the correct path. Now, can you see what's happening with my life right now? I'm putting God first and not this debate, and that's the most important thing.
I think something that's overlooked by people who think the way you do, and I understand that revelation is the only way that someone will ever come to Christ. I understand that. But there's a lot of side damage done in the world by the false ideology, and it results in Christians who believe in evolution. That they doubt God's word. They don't take God's word seriously. Consider this Fiona person whom I debated not long ago. She's a Christian. She believes in evolution. She preaches for it ardently. She defends it, and she calls creationists ignorant. Now, what do you say about somebody who is a Christian who calls other Christians ignorant because they believe the Word of God on the matter of creation, and they believe science actually supports that word? Do you see now? There's another whole perspective to this that you're ignoring,
and this is
it's a very important one.
And this is the exact problem.
It comes back to how you respect the Word of God, and people like that do not respect the Word of God.
But this is the exact problem you get with when you go down this road, trying to prove evolution and creation. You've got to keep the main thing, and the main thing in our faith is not creation. Okay, that's not the main thing. We're not arguing for that. We've got a book here, and if we're true believers, we've got to obey what it says in the book. And it tells me in the book that we should not get involved in silly arguments, because these lead to disagreements.
Right, it's not a silly argument.
Simple as. It's a silly argument. It's a fruitless
argument,
because you cannot argue anyone into the kingdom. It's by revelation. You said it yourself, Neff. You nailed it.
Look, I can use your own words against you. Do you believe that it's important for a Christian to believe the Word of God is inspired by God and it's true?
It's only by revelation.
Do you believe that is true? Do you believe that it's important for a Christian to believe the Word of God and accept it for what it says?
We accept it, but we can't.
To not doubt it.
We accept it, but we can't prove it. And even
okay.
Can prove it,
you didn't answer my question. See, this is the question that people who think like you don't want to answer. Is it important that Christians believe the Word of God? Is that going to have an effect on their life?
It's important, but it's not the most important.
Okay. Well, when a Christian argues that evolution is true and God created nothing, they're doing harm to the body of Christ as well as to themselves, because they're not believing the Word of God.
The concrete doctrine is not so much the issue. It's that when you have the difference with, Andy and Fiona, you're going around saying they're not true Christians, and other people like Grand Cam are saying things like prostituting for atheism.
I don't know what you're talking about. Prostituting for atheism?
Randcam
said that.
Not whatever he says, it's irrelevant to what I believe. And I believe it's important for Christians to believe the Word of God, not doubt it. Because if you're going to throw out Genesis, why not throw out Matthew? Why not throw out everything that Jesus Christ said himself? See what I mean? It is a very important subject.
We understand there's a doctrinal difference, right? The question is, can you be more civil about your doctrinal differences?
Well, civil, it's an important subject. I mean, and if somebody's putting forth the lie that God's Word is a lie, when Jesus Christ said out of his own mouth, God himself incarnate said, he who made them in the beginning made them male and female, you might as well be telling God you're a liar. And that is a very important thing. So it is very important. In fact, the evolution controversy, this lie of evolution, is the most dastardly, destructive, most blasphemous thing that's come out of the mouth of a human being.
Can I interject here? I would like to say that evolution doesn't have anything to do with purpose or morals.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. It just
I'll show you
where we come from. And for you to say that it makes all these claims, it doesn't. If it contradicts, if you think it contradicts with your worldview, that's your problem. But it absolutely does not mean that it has anything to do with morals or
Oh,
purpose
yes.
or how we live our life.
It truly does. Well, let me explain to you why it does. Because if you're just a product of pond scum, then you didn't come from anything that has moral law.
Well, I wanna
Did I
counter
really
that.
have to explain that to you? Did I really have to? Did
Well,
is
I
that not
wanna
something?
counter that though. What do you say to all the people who believe in evolution and go around dedicating their lives to doing good things? Are they a product of this wretched sort of personal worldview?
Well, are they also the kind of people that argue it's okay to have mommy and daddy having sex on TV in prime time, where we can sit and watch our popcorn after
It
school and
depends
watch
on the
it?
person. Some
That's
people
the same kind of
do.
people that promote that kind of thing.
First of all, I don't believe in sex on TV, and I actually don't even believe in violence in TV.
Well,
As a general rule, I'm an atheist and I believe in evolution. And not only that, I try to do good things.
I wouldn't suggest you don't.
Well,
But I'm just saying that the mindset of mindset of people who are atheists and the mindset of people who are for evolution, against biblical creation, against scientific creationism, these are people that we would label leftist or liberal, right? And it is that kind of, and it is that kind. No, that is not wrong.
Wrong.
And it is that kind of people.
No, you can't know what.
These kinds of things.
Excuse me!
Wait, no, you made a few
Just
claims
tell me.
here. You made a few claims, and I want to counter them. I am liberal on certain issues, and I'm obviously, if you've ever heard me, conservative on some others. It depends on the issue. And I know people who are conservative where I'm liberal, and liberal where I'm conservative, and also believe in evolution. It depends on the person, and it depends on the issue.
Yeah,
Michael Shermer, for example, is tends to be a libertarian and conservative on economic issues.
And that doesn't make me wrong.
It does make you wrong, because you just claimed that atheism and belief in evolution leads to a certain worldview, which is basically that you end up not respecting yourself or others. And I'm showing you that people who are atheists, no, it doesn't, because it doesn't with me.
I would like to ask.
Because it doesn't with you doesn't mean it doesn't in general. And it doesn't.
That's our point.
I'm exceptional. Well, I've always known that, but you would have to show me proof.
I don't need to. It's quite obvious to anybody over 40.
Apply to everybody else.
Wow.
Has he ever met someone that believes that an evolutionist?
Are you seriously saying that there's not
Stop interrupting, Neff.
Have you ever met someone and that believes in evolution, that has believes that people are just meat and all these immoral things? Have you ever met someone that's actually held that view?
Yeah, the fellow that shot people to death at Columbine. He was wearing an evolution T-shirt, and he did it for Hitler.
You met him, did you?
Yeah.
Eric Harris.
Yeah, and the fellows that killed high school students in Clinton, Mississippi. You remember that one? About 10 years ago?
You met them as well, did you?
He also believed in evolution, was blogging about evolution and godlessness on his blog.
And there were people that killed in the name of
seriously. If you believe that there are two worldviews that are basically can be seen in the world, whereby some over here are Christians and they're believers in creation and they're conservative, and then there are other people over here who are doubt or dislike the idea of God, call themselves atheist or liberal. If you're honestly trying to tell me that there is not a true remarkable difference in the way that these two people think, I'd say you're blowing smoke out of your.
Compared to
and I think denying that that's true. And I think denying that that's true demonstrates that worldview difference.
Asserting it's true is something.
I don't need to assert.
Someone else is speaking now. This assertion, this idea you have of there are only two worldviews is nonsense. There are people. I know
Say
people.
there are only two
Still
worldviews.
speaking. Still speaking. There are people around that I know, atheists that don't accept evolution. I know just because I'm an atheist or because someone else is an atheist doesn't denote their entire worldview.
Well, they're not consistent with their worldview if they accept.
Nearly finished.
They don't.
Nearly finished. So this idea that if you're an atheist, you must believe in evolution, therefore your worldview is X, Y, Z, is utter cack.
Okay. What you don't understand is that if atheism is true, evolution must be true because there has to be an explanation for life on this
really
planet.
don't. You chastise people for not understanding the subtleties of Christianity,
That's
and
quite
at the same time, you make these broad generalizations about evolution and atheism, which are patently wrong.
No,
I think you really need. I really think you really need to re-examine what you think they are.
Okay, so tell me how life in this world got here, if not by creation.
We don't know where life originated.
I don't know because the only alternative
that's an honest answer.
The only
natural model.
Look, you guys are being really silly. There's only two potential explanations for life on this planet. It was either created or it came about by natural processes. That's it.
Well, Neffy, wait a minute.
You guys are just being really silly.
Can you explain to me? Do you have the answer to quantum gravity?
Yes.
Or unification theory? You do.
I do.
So can you write the equation on the screen, please?
I don't have an equation for it.
Well, then you don't really know what the hell you're talking about.
Yes, I do.
Because you don't have any sort of knowledge whatsoever on this subject.
In the beginning, God created.
And that's the answer to the problem of quantum gravity? That's the answer to the Higgs field unification theory? Really? So you can tell us exactly how quantum gravity works.
I don't need to. God Almighty.
Please write the equation on the screen.
I don't need to. God Almighty.
Please write the damn equation on the screen.
In the universe that you can't explain how they work.
Let's get you guys to catch yourself in your own noose. If creation isn't true, and you're an atheist, what other explanation is there for the origin of life on this planet? If not naturalist processes.
We don't.
Right, so you can't give one because there is only two.
Like we don't know.
And so you're being super duper silly.
No.
Assertion, Neff.
Oh, that's bullshit.
That's being very silly. It's not logical. You're being illogical.
Yeah, the trouble
well, you're being a liar actually right now because you said you could solve quantum gravity. I'd like.
This is starting to get ridiculous, and
so you're being inconsistent with your worldview.
No. This is starting to get ridiculous. There's too many people talking at once. This is not going anywhere, and people are starting to complain about it. So, Neff, you need to take less time talking because you're starting to dominate the entire conversation. And if you continue to do that, I will have to start moderating more strictly. I don't want to turn this into an evolution versus creation thing because we did that a couple of weeks ago. We can do it again in the future, but let's not do this now.
Oh, I'm not debating, which one is true. I'm debating how they apply to worldviews.
Okay. All I'm asking is that you let give other people the chance to speak because it's not. I gave you 50% of the time last time, and I'm not going to do it this time because there are 9 other people in the room. And I won't speak much myself, but we do need to have this fairly allocated. And if it gets out of hand again, I will start muting people. Okay. Nathaniel, did you have a point? They wanted to finish off making.
No, it's all right. I think I've said what I needed to say for now.
Yeah, I have something, which is essentially that, Fiona and Andy are very sincere in their beliefs. Never mind the billion Catholics following, the Vatican doctrine of theistic evolution as well, and calling them not true Christians, really is denigrating. Never mind some of the other kinds of aspersions from other people. And can you find a way to, please relate to these people in a more civil way that's, more accepting of the fact that they can hold that in tandem with their Christianity?
So I would just like to point out, when I said what other potential explanation is there, I don't know, which demonstrates there isn't one. See, so when you hear an atheist say, well, it doesn't have to be evolution or creation, that's just that's false. That's illogical, and that person is not being consistent with their own worldview. There is only two explanations as to how life got here. It was either produced by an intelligence or it came about by natural processes. There's not only, and if you say aliens brought it here, well, you're pointing to an intelligence. And if you say, well, the aliens evolved, well, you're still talking about evolution. You see, you can't find a third one because there is no third one.
We don't.
Evan.
No, that's not a third one.
It's an honest one.
That's still not the point of, how you're interacting with the theistic evolutionists, right? You're saying essentially they're not true Christians. Is there a way to respect their faith and such?
I didn't say they're not true Christians. I'm saying they're calling God a liar and they're not believing God's word. And that has a negative effect upon other Christians.
Which God?
There is only one. How could there be more? How could there be more than one? It's illogical to believe there's more than one God.
The commandments suggest.
Well, it depends on what you believe.
Yeah.
No, it's just illogical.
But really,
so Hindus by 1 billion people are just being illogical.
Well, they don't know the one true God. And it's illogical to believe there's more than one supreme being.
Why?
Because then the being wouldn't be supreme.
Who says that it has to be supreme?
It's only logical that it's supreme.
Why? Why is it only logical it has to be supreme?
Over the other gods.
Because neither one has because both can't coexist eternally and be almighty. Do you understand the idea of almighty?
Why does a God have to be
all power
eternally?
All power implies everything that it is not itself has lesser power.
I understand. Why does a God have to fit that definition?
Because it is logical. When human beings think of God, they automatically think of a being that is all knowledge and all power.
No, obviously some don't.
Yes, they do.
No, the Greeks didn't think that their gods were all powerful.
Right, they were illogical.
And the Hindus don't necessarily think that their gods are all powerful.
The Greeks were illogical. Did you say the Greeks?
So you
their theology was.
You didn't explain to me why you think it's illogical.
I did. I told you that it's illogical to believe there are two supreme beings.
I didn't know. What if you believe that there are higher beings, but they aren't supreme? Why is that necessarily illogical? Explain to me the logical fallacy.
Well, I already have.
No, you didn't. You made a claim.
Yes.
You didn't explain the logical fallacy. You just made a claim.
Okay. I accept that you don't accept my statement.
No, I accept what you believe as your statement.
Mm-hmm.
I asked you for an explanation of why, and you didn't.
I can't make your logic work the way mine does, so I don't know what I can do for you.
Well, you said when human beings think of something, they think of what you think. I showed you that not all human beings do think that way, so why is that illogical?
Well, Western people do, modern Western people do, and that's because advances in philosophy and human experience in dealing with other religions around the world have led people to believe, to understand. I'll give it to you the way Dr. Werner Giet, professor of the German Federal Institute of Information Technology, said. He's the world's foremost authority on information and has advanced information theory more than any other. He says he was giving a lecture once, and a student lady stood up and asked him, what about your God? What if there's an Uber God? And he says, okay, so you're saying that there's an Uber God over my God? And she says, yes. And he said, okay, so what about the God that's over that God, though? The Uber God. And she said, well, yes. And he says, so there's a Uber God too, right? And a Uber God, right? And he said to her, that's the problem. None of them are God. So do you understand now?
No, because once again, I mean, I do, but once again, it doesn't address the issue that some people believe in higher beings that aren't necessarily omnipotent or omniscient.
Well, that would go back to history and how those religions
jump in here. Hang on. Prudent wants to jump in here. He's got a point, I can tell. So Prudent, do you want to make your point here?
Well, no, I was just going to point out that that doesn't really address anything what Nephi just said. So I don't really have a point right now per se, but you can come back to me later.
Well, I think what you're getting into is how those and why we should or shouldn't believe them, and that's a subject I enjoy discussing if you wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to ask you why you think it's illogical. I know it doesn't fit into your worldview, but it definitely fits into the worldview of other people who are just as faithful to their worldview. So how do you mesh this idea that they're somehow all being illogical about their definition of God?
I just explained to you, none of the Uber gods are God. You're not talking about God.
That's a claim. Don't you see the difference?
On your definition of God. At the end of the day, that's just a definition. If there's two equally as high beings, then you can define them both as God if you want them to. If there are two beings that created the universe, you could define them both as God. It's just a matter of definition.
Yeah. See, what I'm coming from is within the Christian worldview, it's illogical. They might, you might have Hindus that believe it. The Babylonians did. You might have had other cultures, the Greeks, the Egyptians, believe that it's not illogical. But that's fine. Within my Christian worldview, it is illogical, and it seems logical to me that it's illogical.
Okay. All right. I'll accept that as your claim.
I think Dylan's got a point and a slightly different topic that he wants to move on to. Dylan, do you want to start us off with? You had a topic, didn't you, Dylan?
Yeah, I do. Everyone, just chill out, take a big breath, relax a bit. I wanted to ask a quick question about a conundrum which I've been living with for my since my mid-teenage life. I'm a bit of a metalhead, but you don't have to be a metalhead to understand this issue. Think of bands like Creed and Live, or Live, however they pronounce it. These Christian bands, right? They're usually American. There's in the metal industry, there's a lot of bands out there which are heavy metal Christian bands, and I found this out to my dismay at the age of 18 or so that a lot of the bands I'd been listening to and really liked were actually Christian bands, and I don't just mean that the members are Christian. I mean they're actually preaching Christian doctrine in their music. One example of a band is a group called Under Oath, and the reason I didn't figure it out for a while is because these bands sometimes the lyrics are not are illegible in the way that they sing. So ever since around the age of 18, I've actually been boycotting any band, any metal band which is openly just singing about Christianity. And whenever I find a new band I like now, I get paranoid and I have to go onto Wikipedia and find out if they're Christian or not. So I was wondering if anyone else has this issue. I think I heard Jordan Owen, I don't know if you guys know Jordan Owen, but I heard him say once that he doesn't care, he just listens to music, and if he likes the sound, he listens to it. But I felt kind of disenfranchised that I'd been listening to Dogma all this time.
Yeah,
I
have nothing to contribute there whatsoever. I don't listen to metal like that. Sorry.
have a similar issue. Industrial has a very strong theme or sorts. I mean, you have things like Ministry, Velvet Acid Christ, Combi Christ, Covenant, Machines of Loving Grace, V&V Nation, and so on. You can tell just the band names, right? And by and large, I just kind of blow it off. I don't seem to have a big, I don't know, need for purity in this regard. So, I mean, the issue's there, but I don't feel the conflict. Okay, go ahead.
I used to, or I found out, I was disappointed when I found out Disturbed used to be a Christian band. And they do a lot of great songs.
I honestly didn't know that, really.
Yeah. But I think if one of the reasons I never really liked Christian bands is because I always thought their music was shit because they're always singing about God all the time, even when I was a Christian. So I never found a Christian band I actually liked.
Yeah, there was some that got really popular, like Creed in the mainstream music. I don't know if you remember them.
But it is like eye rolling when you hear these bands that you like talk about God, and it's just like, next, please.
Could I bring up a more general point here? I mean, we don't. This doesn't have to be limited to metal, but so Dylan, you're saying that you wouldn't like to listen to the music if it has certain religious connotations. I mean, would this apply to any religion? I mean, is there really anything inherently bad about listening to religious music? I mean, surely it's the music that's important, not the connotations associated with it. If it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah, let me explain a bit. I listen to a band called Thrice, and I call them a metal band. They sing a lot about religion and about mythology, Greek mythology as well. And I also listen to a band called Bless the Fall, who are really, well, not really, quite hard for your standards, but they sing a lot about religion as well. But they're not a religious band. They're not actually promoting the religion like the Christian bands do. Under Oath, who's a Christian band who I mentioned earlier, has one track, for example, that just repeatedly says, "Jesus Christ, I love you," which doesn't have any valuable input at all except to promote Christianity, and that's it.
Sounds exceedingly boring as a track.
Yeah,
it sounds kind of like Dave Lister's song, if you know Rick.
The music in the background was surprisingly.
I have to say, by the way, I have to mention as an atheist that my wake-up music every morning on my iPad is currently been, for the last 2 months, Handel's Messiah. So, you know.
What about
like some
church
popular
music and that sort of thing? Would you be okay with listening to church music? I mean, lots of church music is really, really quite beautiful, really. I mean, choral music, orchestral, that sort of thing. Would you have a problem with that? I mean, you might not be into classical, but...
Wait, who are you asking?
Well, I guess Dylan, but anyone would.
Well, I listen to church music. I listen to organ music all the time by Bach. I love classical music. I have absolutely no problem with listening. In fact, on Sundays, as an atheist, born a Jew, living in Israel, I still play every morning Bach organ music usually. So it's just a habit of mine.
Okay, Nathaniel, if I could maybe ask an easier question for you, Nathaniel, is what if in the background of your classical music there was a hymn saying praise Jesus? Would you still like the music?
Well, Bach has hymns praising Jesus all the time. I mean, I don't know if you've ever listened to Bach, but that's his thing. His thing. I mean, he wrote a lot of religious music, all of which I happen to really love. I have no problem listening to it. It's beautiful music. But it doesn't repeat praise Jesus over and over again ad nauseum. It has poetry in it. It has in German, but I know it's maybe a contradiction, but it's beautiful music. So I have no problem listening to it. I absolutely adore it.
Okay, and what if it was actively trying to, sorry, Neff, I'll let you speak in a sec. What if it was actively trying to promote Christianity? As someone who's not pro-Christian myself, that's my point, that my key contention is that the lyrics
you
are
have to
promoting
listen.
Christianity.
Well, if you listen to the works of Bach, many of them do. It was written for the church. I absolutely love it, but I don't happen to like metal, especially Christian metal. I think it's really, really lowbrow, and I think it's idiotic. But that's my personal taste. I happen to love Bach, you know.
I should point out that E Domine's Vater Unser was a big dance club hit in Portland in the 2000s. I used to go out there and dance to. It is literally the Lord's Prayer in German with, dance music. So, and you see tons of people in all kinds of velvet, PVC, leather, and so on, me in 5-inch heels and so on, dancing to this stuff. And
I mean, Dylan, what do you think organ music was written for? There was only one place you could play the organ was in a church, and still today, really. I mean, the only place that you find organists are in churches. So any organ music written by Bach was meant for a church.
Good point.
Yeah.
I don't like the sound of heavy metal music myself. I used to love it when I was a teenager. I had all Black Sabbath's albums, all Led Zeppelin's albums. I know all their songs prior to, say, 1980. But something changed in me when I became a Christian, and the sound of Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin, not all Led Zeppelin's music, most of Black Sabbath, just became disturbing to me. I think that the music produces a movement of spirit of some kind in a person that's opposed to God in some way. I don't know how I can explain that, but I point out one other thing that I think is interesting. I do like listening to contemporary Christian music. Some of it I don't really much care for, but a lot of it I like quite a bit. And I think it's interesting that some of these guys that write this stuff that you'll hear on Christian radio stations, some of these artists that write this stuff are really talented guys. If they were not dedicated to making their music specifically Christian, they could easily be in mainstream making millions of dollars a year. But they don't, because there's not going to be millions of dollars income for a Christian contemporary music guy. You might make a good living, but you're not going to get rich, but not rich, but
I have to say, as somebody who loves classical, I grew up also on Zeppelin. I can play pretty much every single Zeppelin song on the guitar. I grew up with Clapton and the Rolling Stones and everything. I still love to listen to them. I just prefer classical now, but I don't see that these certain bands produce bad feelings in any way whatsoever. I really enjoy their music. And as I said, I can play a hell of a lot of songs on the guitar or even the drums or the piano because I was trained in several instruments.
Well, what do you mean bad? That's the thing I would take issue with. What I mean by that, what I said is, think about songs like. Are you familiar with the song "The Wizard" by Black Sabbath? Awesome piece of metal. I mean, really is. I can admire it today for what it is because it was just phenomenal. The drums in that were just really creative. It was just a fantastic piece of music. One of the best they ever did, really, if you ask me. But just think about the sound of the guitars in that song. That ba-dum, ba-dum, that kind of thing over and over. It's very dark and it's hard, really hard.
Yeah, but I never liked Black Sabbath, actually. I never was into them.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is it's that darkness and that hardness to it. I think that it's very opposed to what Christians experience when they experience God's Holy Spirit. It's very much different, completely different. And
really?
So
I'll take that as your
Christian
personal
music
choice.
lacked passion. I always saw Christian music, you could just listen and tell, compared to the to the singers, mainstream singers. You could tell that they lacked passion in what they were doing. Even as a Christian, I could tell this, and you could tell their hearts aren't in it.
Yeah, I look, Nephi, I'll take that as your personal musical choice. I don't happen to like Sabbath all that much myself, and I don't actually even like Metallica. all that much. I just think it's just too hard on my ears. I'm not a fan. But a lot of classic rock I happen to enjoy quite a lot, and I used to play in a few bands. Somebody who actually became quite famous later. I basically grew up as a teenager on that, and I'm not going to reject it. I mean, I used to go to Dead shows all the time, and I love the Grateful Dead. So as much of a classical musical snob as I can be, and I know I am, but I also enjoy a lot of classic rock and a lot of rock and roll.
Do you like Joaquin Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez? Have you heard it?
No, I don't know if I have actually.
You should take a listen to that sometime. You can hear it. I've watched it on YouTube. It's actually on YouTube. It's Joaquin Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez.
Aranjuez, yes, yes, of course, and I've heard different people play it actually. So yeah, in fact, I know a few passages on the guitar, but it's extremely hard to play, actually.
Yeah, the interesting note about that piece is during its first public performance, Rodrigo was performing it in Poland. And just as he was performing it, during his performance, the Germans' army started rolling into Poland with their tanks and trucks. And while he was playing it. But they stayed and listened to it anyway, and it received a standing ovation, which is unusual for the first performance of a piece of classical. But and then at the end of the performance, everybody scatters because here comes the Germans, But it was just an interesting little side note of history about that. Its first public performance was taking place when the Germans rolled into Poland.
Yeah, I know it. I wasn't listening to your pronunciation, but yeah, I know it. But if you want to hear a very good rendition, Paco de Lucia, who died just a few months ago, unfortunately, was one of my favorite renditions of that guitar piece. Mm-hmm. So, and it's on YouTube. He has actually, I think, 2 versions on YouTube where he plays. And so I highly recommend that. And I love classical guitar, yeah, absolutely.
About Segovia. You like Andre Segovia?
Absolutely.
Oh.
I love Segovia.
Yeah, like
Go ahead, Nadia. Go ahead. I know you've been waiting to say something for ages. So.
Oh, I was going to say I like Segovia too, and I was going to give the link to Vater Unser by In Nomine. And last entirely eluded some of these people, like what is it? Ministry, for example, got a hit 1983 with Revenge, and what is it? It's a little bit tough for me to just dig it up offhand, but it's not the only one who's gotten Christian things out there that have had commercial success. So, I mean,
okay,
it's not maybe not the dominant case, but here's the link. It's the Lord's Prayer in German as a dance club hit. Anyway.
If possible, I would like to ask a more general question. Would people be okay with listening to a piece of music that was produced by a criminal? I mean, let's say quite a bad criminal.
You mean like Michael Jackson?
Well, I mean, okay, yeah. I mean, I don't want to assume anything here, but let's say hypothetically there was a murderer that produced really good music before he killed someone. Would people be okay with listening to that music after he killed a load of people?
I'll go first. I'll say yes. I listen to music based on the value of the music itself. The reason I don't listen to Christian music is because of the message of Christianity. So if the murderer were to write tracks promoting his murder, then obviously it might be interesting to listen to learn about his mind. But so far as the value in the music, I don't see it.
I find it disturbing myself.
I would actually find it disturbing, but it depends on the music. I mean, look, you know, there's a reason why Wagner isn't played. I mean, Wagner never killed anybody, but there's a reason why Wagner isn't played in Israel generally. But I actually listen to Wagner all the time, and I don't really have a problem with it. So I suppose it depends. I happen to love Wagner, and I have several renditions of each and every opera he's ever written. So. You know, again, he didn't kill anybody, but obviously his beliefs put into action were partly responsible in some way towards the Holocaust. So, or so some people believe. So I think that yeah, I can sympathize with somebody not wanting to. And I suppose it also depends on the music. But if he had actually killed somebody himself, perhaps not. I don't know.
Blitzkrieg, huh?
Wasn't there a recent stink about the death of Klinghoffer? Death of Klinghoffer.
Yes, at the Met, and I used to sing at the Met in the children's chorus, so it affects me in a deeper way than a lot of others. But one of my friends who sang in the children's chorus at the same time as I did. We're still friends on Facebook. He's still very much in the operatic circles. He still performs, etc. You know, 30 years on, and he actually reviewed it. He went to the performance and he posted a review of it. It's a very interesting review. He actually saw the opposite of what some people were claiming. I don't really. I'm not sure I would go just because I don't tend to like modern opera in any way whatsoever. But that's just because I don't really enjoy the music more than just the subject matter. If it was actually really good music, perhaps I would go and just watch it. I mean, if somebody bought me a ticket and I was living in New York again, I would probably go just to see it and witness it myself and decide for myself. But you know, I wouldn't go on my own buying a ticket just to see it. No, but not necessarily because of the content matter. And regardless of how people judged it one way or the other, that wouldn't sway my decision.
Yeah. Well, I miss New York.
Yeah, I do too. I grew up there, and then I worked there for a while, and you know, I loved living there.
You grew up everywhere.
I did. The first I guess 14 years of my life were just spent in a whole bunch of places. So, but New York was the first place that I moved to from Europe to America, so it was like formative in my impressions of America and the way I learned to speak English differently than I used to with a British accent, which I did for a long time, because the first English I ever learned was in England. First words I ever learned were in England.
The best form of English.
Yeah, I grew up in Chiswick when I was very young. My first memories are from Chiswick, and I used to speak with a very upper crust English accent. I used to I went to a school named Hill House in London, where Prince Charles went actually, and I was like maybe one of 3 Jews in the whole school. But it was the first place I, in fact, not only learned how to speak but also how to read, and so you know, all my English, my first memories of English are all from there originally. And when I moved to New York after living in England and Belgium, then I had to change my accent because, you know, when you're 10 or 11 years old and you sound like a Brit and you're in an American school, it doesn't go too well for you. But kids adapt pretty quickly with accents, so I did as well.
Very good.
So I guess people want to go on to another topic. Are people okay discussing the recent election in the US? I mean, I don't know much about it, but
yeah, I don't mind, but I don't know if it affects. Most people know about it, but
could someone just explain what the election actually was? Is there a new president? I have no idea.
It was the legislature, kind of like a parliament where you might be from.
Yeah.
And, well, the trouble is, of course, right-wing conservative people seem to have taken over. And they have trouble with people like Gary Glenn and Gordon Klingenschmidt getting elected. And if I may point to Gordon Klingenschmidt's history of, well, rather vitriolic statements and such. Let's see, I think he claimed Obama was possessed by demons and in need of exorcism. So this is very Christian extremist. Yeah, very Christian extremist.
Oh no, actually, he was right about that one. I think he got that one right.
Well, the thing is, I covered politics for a while as a photojournalist. When I was living in D.C., I was a photojournalist for Scripps Howard and AFP and UPI and Congressional Quarterly, and I was actually there for the quote-unquote Republican takeover 20 years ago with Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich coming into power and the Republicans coming into power. And the thing is that the Republicans seem to every single time take their opportunity and squander it in some huge fiasco that makes everybody end up supporting the president because they just come out mean-spirited. So while it is going to be Republican Congress, etc., the president still has a veto, just like Clinton did, and can politically use it to his advantage depending on how well he manipulates the politics of the situation and the issue. So I am not that dreadfully concerned. They don't have enough to overturn a presidential veto. And, you know, in the end, they're going to either have to compromise or the people end up blaming Congress. People usually end up blaming Congress before they blame the president for any deadlock issues. That seems to be the historical trend. You know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this time will be different, and who knows? I'm not claiming clairvoyance here, but I think that politically speaking, Obama is not necessarily in a more terrible place than he was before. It might be slightly more difficult, but remember, he was a lame duck president anyway, and it wasn't like he was going to get anywhere with his you know, with any new impetus anyway. At this point, people are just waiting for the next presidential election. So I don't think I think this is for the Republicans to lose rather than win, and this is for Obama to basically just endure until the end of his term.
It seems to me America's headed along the lines of the book Christian Nation. It seems to be heading that way.
Obama is probably the worst president the United States has ever had.
Someone who hasn't read that, what is the book's thesis?
The basis of the book goes back before, well, to the last election, and instead of Obama winning the election, I think, is it McCain that was the first election? McCain wins, and Sarah Palin is his vice president. And then McCain suffers a heart attack during a speech, and lo and behold, Sarah Palin becomes the president of the United States, which is not that far-fetched. It could have gone that way.
Actually, I heard that story.
Yeah, and the book goes along the lines of it's a novel. It's not, but based on certain facts, obviously. But and then the book explains that there are some shady advisors, etc., with an agenda that convince Sarah Palin to, I think, pretty much get rid of the Constitution, and then the laws in America follow the lines of the Bible. And so things like homosexuality becomes illegal, and people are imprisoned and executed. Abortion becomes, it's a novel, Neffy. Abortion becomes illegal, and in other words, it becomes a theocracy.
Well, did you hear that actually McCain is probably going to run again, according to sources?
That was the reason I mentioned that it could well go that way.
Well, he's not going to pick Sarah Palin again, that's for sure. But I don't think he's going to get far. Maybe he will get further than most people think. McCain has a way of rebounding during primaries in ways that are unimaginable, but I don't think he's going to.
No, I think the Palin part of the book is just the fact that she's portrayed obviously as a very weak-minded idiot, which is.
I think there's something dramatically wrong with the thinking of someone
whether it's Palin or not. I think if McCain won, it's the people behind the scenes that in the book that convinced a weak president, as Palin is in the book, to give over everything to a Christian theocracy.
I think there's something very wrong with the thinking of somebody who'd write a book about Christians putting a law into effect that requires executing everyone who won't be a Christian.
No, I didn't say that. I said the book goes along the lines of biblical law and does away with American law as it stands, and things like homosexuality and
reconstructionism
become illegal. Yeah, reconstructionism. Yeah. So,
well, God didn't put those laws in place for the world, and He didn't do it for the Hebrews for all time. He put His foot down like He did several times because the Hebrews refused to follow Him.
Yeah, but you realize that you hold one particular belief on that subject, and Reconstructionists hold another belief on that subject.
Well, I mean, people are welcome to be wrong about things, too.
Right, but what the book is, I've never read it, but it sounds like it's saying that if Reconstructionists get hold of the government, then, and have the political power to do certain things, and that's what they might do.
I don't think Reconstructionists believe such a thing as that.
Well, no, they do. They say it openly.
They do, really?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They say they believe in implementing laws for executing.
Absolutely, they believe in the Levitican laws to a T. They're not shy of saying this.
How many are there of these?
Well, that's the thing. They're actually very small, but they're fairly influential. They have a lot of money. The Reconstructionist the Reconstructionist movement from the 80s and 90s is pretty much dead as we know it. However, it has coalesced into other movements which do have a lot of influence and money. But I would say that they're still an extreme minority, but they are there.
Yeah, they're an extreme nutbag few. I don't think you can't base Christianity, of course, on the belief of a handful of white nuts.
The likes of Scott Terry would love for this to come true. But the book is Christian Nation by Frederick with a C Rich.
Yeah.
I know Wayne talks about it quite a lot.
For more influential people, one should note the influence of Rousas Rushdoony.
Yes.
On Howard Amundsen and Gary North. Gary North, who is noted as something of a, I wouldn't say policy advisor, but someone who's at least inspired various tactics. He literally coined the phrase "starve the beast," which was to induce a fiscal crisis by excessive unfunded military spending in order to serve as a pretext for cutting social spending. So.
Rushdoony's influence in terms of a philosophy is a lot bigger than some people realize. I mean, that's just uncontestable.
Well, that kind of thing goes on already. I mean, what do you think 9/11 was for?
This is exactly what we're saying.
It was to take away your rights. It was to take away your rights to implement the Patriot Act so that the feds don't need a subpoena to listen to your phone conversations, watch your internet connection, or kick your door.
The evidence of that is a bit questionable. In this case, we have an explicit statement, and of course, people actually following the prescriptions. So that's a very different level of evidence.
There is another book that I think I'm not sure whether it's referenced in Christian Nation, but it's by Sinclair Lewis. I think it was written in the early part of the 20th century, and it's called "It Can't Happen Here," which.
I've heard of it actually.
Yeah, it was written at the time of the Depression, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you know, this kind of thing has actually succeeded in the past by larger groups than just a handful of whacknuts. I mean, the ideas of Marx and Stalin, and Marx and a few other Kugelman and a few other atheist philosophers of the latter half of the 19th century came to fruition in the early 20th century. We see the results of that.
Well, I think
Stalin
as
wasn't
Wayne,
a philosopher, but
A mountain of bodies and a river of blood.
well, Stalin wasn't a philosopher. Marx was a philosopher, but not Stalin.
I think Wayne has mentioned it before.
Right, that's why
I'm not quite sure of the name of the college. Was it Patrick something College? Patrick College in the States that actually tries to produce politicians.
I forget the name. Yeah, Patrick.
To get into, they actually, their sole purpose, their main purpose is to get people that want the sort of theocracy that the Reconstructionists want into politics in America and run it from there.
I believe in theocracy. I think the world should be a theocracy under Jesus Christ. But I don't believe that means implementing laws to execute people.
Well, that's the whole idea of a theocracy.
That's for the nutters. We're already in a theocracy. You just don't believe it or realize it.
Where?
The whole world is a theocracy.
No, it's not.
Maybe Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Jesus Christ made the place, and he owns it. He's coming back to take claim of it as well.
Yeah, okay.
He's God. God is in control all times.
How are you going to recognize him? You didn't even know what he looks like.
The scripture says a sparrow doesn't even fall to the ground that God does not permit it.
You see, Nephi, Mark can disagree with you because we live in a democracy.
It's true.
And if it was a theocracy, it would be there would be a problem with that.
No, it's man's democracy, but God is the owner and proprietor.
Well, that's something you can believe. It's up to you.
He's an absent landlord if he is.
May I recount?
Quite not so. Not with all the miracles that he performs and lives he transforms. He's not absent whatsoever.
Give me evidence of one miracle.
There's a lady lying in a bed taking a nap 5 feet from me who was recipient of a miracle. I was present when it happened and was a participant in it.
Yeah, well, some people the fact you say you saw something doesn't mean anything. It's not evident. Not much good evidence, is it? You need more than that.
Well, her diabetes neuropathy is sure as heck gone.
You've got medical evidence for that, have you?
I got her testimony. She should get on the mic and tell you.
That's a no then.
Yeah, we did. Her testimony.
That's not medical evidence, is it?
That is medical evidence. The pain is gone. The medical evidence says that can't happen.
Well, the same is no difference in remission in cancer, is it?
Yes, it is, because remission is impossible when diuretic neuropathy is matured. It's impossible for the tissue to regenerate.
If I could recount statements made by Gordon Klinkenschmidt, it may be enlightening as to the character of the people who've been recently elected. Okay, so it's 10 statements. Number 1, gays and Democrats want to rape children. Number 2, Obama is possessed by demons and requires exorcism. Number 3, demonic transgender children need a good spanking and an exorcism. Number 4, we will be forced to engage in sodomy. Number 5, gay people have something unhuman inside of them. Number 6, gay soldiers wear diapers. Number 7, gay animals are of the devil. Number 8, Obamacare causes cancer. Number 9, Obama will kill Bundy Ranch supporters. And number 10, Madonna is trying to have sex with him.
Well, it's all true. It's all true. And Elvis is living on an island and was abducted by aliens.
Yeah, this person has a regular television show of sorts. It describes as a televangelist, and
it's all true. There's a world conspiracy, Nadia. You know, I'm a member. I'm a member because I'm a Zionist, and I have a card-carrying. I'm a card-carrying member, and I have a special, in card, and they pay me apparently. So it's all true. And it's Illuminati based. And hi, Wayne. I was hoping you'd come in.
Yeah. So I mean, Gary Glenn is also noted for being a quote-unquote anti-gay crusader, and has, I guess, what is it? Made some attempts to recriminalize homosexuality in Michigan. As what is it? Urged businesses to refuse to hire individuals who engage in homosexual behavior. Demanded that governors ignore court rulings, strike down same-sex marriage bans, and I believe went on to segregate students, or say that gay students should be segregated out, and that what is it? Gay straight alliances be banned.
Now, do you think that there's do you think that homosexual marriage in any way undermines the beauty of human gender in any way? I doubt that you would say yes.
No.
No.
You don't?
No, I'd say it even, well, reinforces it.
Reinforce it? How in the world?
It's a pointless question, really, because the individuals don't have a choice in the matter anyway.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
No.
How would you know now? How would you know now? Neff, could you choose to be gay right now? Could you really just be attracted to a man if you just choose to?
Homosexuality is a sexual fetish.
No.
Yes.
No, it's not.
I know you don't believe that.
I do.
So are you saying that some people are born with a sexual fetish?
But then you're the guy who thinks that there's some mystical alternative to creation and evolution, but can't think of what it is.
No, I just said we don't know.
Yeah.
I don't claim to know. Science doesn't know.
But you say there isn't, but just two. But you don't know what the third is.
Yes, I said what I said earlier. We're not doing a creation versus.
No, I'm not trying to make it one. I just made a point.
Well,
No.
Wayne's here, and we were talking about Rushduni, and Wayne is rather more expert than I am. I think the only person who's more expert in these circles is Ozzy. So Wayne, give it a go and explain Reconstructionism for us.
Thank you. Well, it all starts. Everything starts with Cornelius Van Til with presuppositional apologetics, and then you get this guy, Musas Rushduni, in the 20th century, Armenian immigrant to the US, Presbyterian minister, and he got some crazy ideas, and in 1973 he wrote his magnum opus, The Institutes of Biblical Law, an 800-page treatise on Calvin's, I think there were, I can't remember what Calvin's original book were, but it's all steeped in Calvinism anyway. But he was of the mind that that the only hope for mankind, or the planet, was a complete institution of Mosaic Levitical law, in which there was no government as such. Basically, a panel of, should I say, church elders that would basically preside over a very small government. Government, under his theory, exists only to provide the defence of the country. Everything devolves to states, but in a theocratic way. There'd be no social, there'd be no welfare state of any kind that would devolve to churches, stroke charities. As Mark's already said, it would be basically as you've got in all those 613 Levitical laws. So adultery, death, you name it, apostasy, blasphemy, death by stoning. Now, he had a son-in-law. Nadia's already mentioned him. And maybe even more nasty piece of work, who was an activist, called Gary North. There's also another guy in that organisation called Gary DeMar. I'll come back to him. Now, the thing is, Rushdoony was at heart a presuppositionalist. Now we've this basically disappeared until it got brought back into scene just a few short years ago with the advent of Mr. Bruggencate. But Rushdoony had a protege, Mr. Gregory Barnson. And everybody talks about all these fundamentalists and theists and this lot talking about this great thinker, this great philosopher, Greg Barnson. But he was primarily a theocracy advocate. Everything he thought, he would just finding nuances on Rushdoony's idiocy.
Barnson was not one of those thinkers. He did not think like what this guy that you're talking about.
Just hold all your horses for a minute. You can fact check this.
I already know about Barnson.
Well,
Barnson was not a theocratical.
Nah, just leave it a minute, right? So you've got Gary North, Gary DeMar, Greg Barnson. Now, all these presuppositionalists quote Barnson. Every single one of them. They tend not to quote Van Til as much. But they do the cannibalized version of Barnson rather than a cannibalized version of Van Til. And I'm not the specialist in presup. I'm more like I look at the big picture behind it. Now, so when Citem Bruggencate is quoting all this stuff, and that people have got no rights, and that without a presupposition of God. That's what it all boils down to. That the atheist can't justify why he would have any rights. That's what it boils down to. Its very heart. Now the thing is, and this all sounds a bit conspiracy theorist, but there's an unbroken chain. I mentioned Gary DeMar. Gary DeMar is president of an organisation called American Vision. And if you look at Citem Bruggencate's video, How to Answer the Fool, it's made by Crown Rights Media. Now, Crown Rights means something very specific. Crown Rights means that basically God owns everything. It's all God's, right? But the thing is, Crown Rights Media in association with American Vision. Now, American Vision, you can put the search in now. American Vision is an openly reconstructionist, openly theonomic. Theonomy is the type of society that the reconstructionists want to do. Now, so you've got it. Citem Bruggencate's presuppositionalist video being openly backed by an openly reconstructionist organisation, and then the final thing was that in Citem Bruggencate's debate with Matt Dillahunty, when asked from a question from the floor, is democracy the best model of government? And he said no. It basically slipped up. I don't think he intended to say this, but I think his ego got the better of him. And he said no. Theocracy, Christian theocracy. Now, my concern is that at minute, presuppositional apologetics is basically a YouTube thing. You got these people making YouTube videos. You got all the atheist community and the theist community debating it. Now, what happens when state-level politicians latch onto this and they start telling people about presup? See, because your average redneck isn't going to go on YouTube and find out that it's been thoroughly debunked. They're going to take it and they're going to say, "My God, this is yeah, this is why atheists should have no rights. Because presupp is basically that the non-believer has got no right to expect any rights or protections under the law unless he presupposes a Christian God. And the whole thing about the Christian Nation novel is that that's what it leads towards. That it's a stripping away of rights. The author himself admits that, I mean, I've got on my YouTube channel is an interview with him done by some television show host in which he fully admits it's a long shot and it's a chain of events that are unlikely to happen, but the very fact that it can happen shows that there's something pretty much wrong.
Hey Wayne, I got a question for you.
Go on.
Do you think all extremists, which have extremist political religious views, and put them into action, which in a destructive way, do you think that there should be? Do you hold to the same sort of standard of admonishing those people as you do the one that you're speaking of?
I'm not sure if I follow you.
Well, I mean, any extremist group that religious political group that puts their actions, their ideas into action and causes harm to the world. Would you agree that all such extremists should be, should not have a foothold in the policy making in the world?
I think that if somebody can be demonstrated to have a fetish for removing the individual's freedoms, then I think they should be kept from the political sphere.
Well, that didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry?
Well, you didn't answer my question. I didn't say anything about taking away people's rights. I had a broader question.
Well, that's what extremists do. Want to do.
Well, extremists do more than
that. Yes, but Wayne answered your question as much as anyone with such extreme views as he is describing shouldn't be allowed to have any influence in politics.
Okay. Well,
when I say allowed, I mean by people, right-thinking people, eliminating him from the process just by not voting for him.
Okay. So then you would you hold people like Frederick Engels and Karl Marx and would you hold these people to the same? Would you group them also as extremists whose ideas?
I am not au fait with the finer points of communism. When you talk about in terms of well, see, the thing is, my understanding is that Karl Marx's original works was that the workers were not free, so he wanted to increase freedoms. He wanted to emancipate the peasants.
No. No, that's the false belief that a lot of people have about the history of communism.
No, just hang on one sec though.
That's not true at all.
Hang on one sec. But the thing is, like every overarching ideology, it tends to get corrupted by corrupt men. So what was envisaged as an improvement for the lot of the poor ended up making them even worse because of the corruption of the people who put it into practice.
Well, obviously, it's those, the whack nuts we're talking about, like LaSalle and Engels and Marx, these people who put their actions into a political system, an ideology that strip people of their rights. Well, the true motivation of these people was not. There's a big false perception that millions of people have. They think that these guys had a great idea that went bad. They didn't. They had a bad idea from the beginning. Their idea was not to make things more even playing field for everybody in their nation, to give the other guy as much of a chance as the other guy. That's not it at all. Their idea was this: let's build a society where you have the majority of people in the world are factory workers and potato diggers and garment factory workers, and above that you have a very tiny middle class that serves the upper class, which sits on Hindu carpets, on English furniture, smoking Cuban cigars and drinking German brandy, and they're rich as you know what, and they rule the whole country.
Yeah, but
and
that
their
wasn't
number
how it was originally.
and their
That wasn't
number is only a few thousand. That's
that wasn't
the
how it was
idea that
intended.
they actually had.
No.
And it goes, it goes all the way back to the potato beggars of the 1600s.
The idea that the worker class, as far as my understanding goes, the idea that the worker class could rule, could be in government.
Well, I'd like to point out. Wait. On a historical note, I'd like to point out that there were communist enclaves that worked quite well for a very long time. They were called kibbutzes. Many of them were founded as completely communist and completely egalitarian in more ways than you could even imagine. And they worked very, very well. The problem only starts to occur when you reach a certain critical mass. But in terms of, no kibbutz ever resorted to dictatorial, by fiat statements. They were always egalitarian, even when they went privatized. They still are very, many of them are still very much the communist enclaves in a lot of sense, in a big sense.
Well, they got one like that in Denmark today. I mean, in Denmark today, Holland, they got themselves a whole neighborhood. I mean, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about enclaves of people, 1,000 or 300 people or 5,000 people. I'm talking about when the idea is implemented for a people, for a nation.
Well, it did get implemented for a nation at the beginning, the nation of Israel. And that actually worked in a lot of ways. Now, a lot of people in Israel lived in Tel Aviv still at the time, but the kibbutzes definitely had a hold on the rest of the country and were actually key in the defense in the war of 1948. Okay. You can't deny this.
You're trying to equivocate the German and Slavic philosophers' ideas to that of the Jewish people trying to establish a nation for themselves in the heat of.
Well, I don't see the difference. They were revolutionaries in every sense of the word.
You don't see the difference?
No, they were revolutionaries in every sense of the word.
Well, okay, so the communist ideas the Soviets had was based on atheism and evolutionism, and that these ideas were implemented in their communism. You don't have that in the Jewish ideas.
Are you kidding me?
They were believing in God. They were very dramatic worldview different.
90% of the kibbutzes were completely atheist. I mean, in more ways than you can imagine.
In more ways, Israel was not founded by such a group of people.
That's absolutely not true. David Ben-Gurion was basically an atheist or an agnostic at best. What do you mean? Have you read his memoirs?
No, Israel.
What do you mean, no?
You're not talking about history.
The founder of Zionism,
I think
was an atheist.
Daniel, I think Nephi wants to go back much further than.
Israel was founded as a nation in 1948 by the United Nations. Millions of Jewish people, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Jewish people, migrated by boat, plane, and train, and
you don't have to tell me. I know the history.
To form the nation in 1948.
They weren't necessarily believers.
So don't tell me that the nation of Israel was founded by these kibbutzes. It wasn't.
You're wrong. Herzl was an atheist. No. Herzl, the guy. No. What do you mean? No, he was an anti-theist.
I just gave you the history of how Israel became a sovereign legal
nation. But you're wrong, Nephi.
I'm sorry to tell you, Nephi, but I live in Israel. I grew up here for many years. I studied Israeli history.
Okay, so the 20th century is a lie, right? 20th century is a lie, right?
If you're just talking about the formation of the nation state.
That's what I'm talking about.
We're not talking about the people that formed the nation. You're talking about something entirely different.
The people didn't follow after that.
I don't know where you're getting. I'm blown away.
Where is Israel today?
Do you know the difference between an Israeli and a Jew?
Oh my God!
Really?
Do you?
Come on.
I'm sorry, Nuffy. You are so misinformed.
See, what you've done is you've taken the idea that there were a few thousand people in Israel that did this, and then equated that falsely to how the nation of Israel got kick-started. And that's
I'm sorry, Nuffy. You're so misinformed.
Nutty.
The very idea of Zionism was a blasphemy. It was written. Der Judenstaat was written by Herzl, who was an anti-theist, an atheist, hated religion, absolutely loathed it, including Judaism.
That's not how Israel got started, though.
What do you mean? That the foundational ideology of Israel,
I
which
told
is
you how
Zionism.
Israel got started.
Well,
The nation.
David Ben-Gurion was an atheist, or again an agnostic at best.
The United Nations was a bunch of atheist Zionists.
was an agnostic. Perez is an agnostic.
The United Nations was a bunch of Zionist atheists.
Nephi, the United Nations recognized and helped form the nation's state as a name. It didn't.
That's right.
The people in the United Nations didn't start it.
Right.
Nation state.
And how many Jewish people were in Israel prior to 1949?
Do you know the difference between Jewish and Israeli?
Do you understand that there were migrations of Jews?
Can you answer the question?
It is irrelevant. The nation didn't exist until then. There were hardly any Jews in Israel anymore until the mass migration. So what you're talking about, this is a ridiculous thing. What you're doing, you're trying to say because there was a little cult of guys doing some whack-nut stuff in Israel prior to the mass migrations of Jews around the world to form the state of Israel in 1948 through 1952. This is the origin of Israel. You guys got
not what he said. That's not what he said.
That's not what I said.
Nephi, what's your point?
This is a ridiculous false equivocation. My point was that what Slavics did with the German philosophy was put their ideology into order, and what it resulted in was a mountain of bodies and a river of blood in the 20th century. That's the idea. That's what I was pointing to. These are whack nuts. They're Kugelman, Marx, Lenin, Lassalle. These philosophers, their ideas and how they were put into action in the latter half of the 20th century, right around shortly after the turn of the 20th century, to form a state built on these ideas of atheism, materialism, and evolutionism. And the result was a mountain of bodies and a river of blood. And I just wondered if our friend here, Wayne, would also hold them to the same sort of would you admonish that kind of thing, just as you would this one whack-nut guy that's got a few thousand followers.
I beg your pardon.
Here, go on.
Are you aware of Lysenkoism or why it was adopted? Why was Lysenkoism endorsed in the USSR?
That didn't answer my question. My question was.
I'm doing a Socratic.
Also not condemn.
I'll ban a Socratic and just tell you.
Would you also not?
Lysenkoism was adopted as a denial of fledgling science and genetics and evolution and so on, because of the eugenicist doctrines held by the Third Reich. So they adopted this Lamarckian silliness that Lysenko had.
Well, Lamarck was right.
In opposition to the quote-unquote social Darwinist and eugenicist affairs of the Third Reich. And, well, that's not evolutionist. That's...
Oh, no, it definitely was. Atheistic and evolutionist. Eugenics is based on evolution theory, natural selection.
That's what they rejected. They rejected eugenics.
No, they didn't. They were
USSR rejected eugenics.
they were engaging in artificial selection, which is the man-made version of natural selection. In fact, Kugelman and Lassalle and Marx all agreed that Darwinism was the biological basis for their political view.
Nephi, I need to ask you a question.
USSR adopted the...
Can I just say this, Nadia, please?
Okay.
Why do you think that eugenics depends on an evolutionary theory?
Because the idea because of what Charles Darwin wrote in *Origin of the Species*.
And I want you to think what you're saying before you address this point, even. Just think what you're saying.
Well, because Darwin wrote that because of natural selection and the rightful order of things, that certain tribes of mankind will and should go by the wayside in favor of what he called the favored races. Do you not know the name of his book, the original title, which atheists are shortening, is Evolution by Natural Selection and Preservation of the Favored Races by Natural Selection.
The
favored races. Okay.
Right. Before Darwin came up with the concept of evolution by natural selection, did any sort of genocide on the basis of race or other types ever not occur?
I have never said it didn't. My asked question to you
well, therefore,
would you condemn the same actions?
Evolutionary theory.
Why? Because that was the basis for their political views, according to.
It depends on wanting to wipe people out, and wanting to wipe people out does not depend on any notion of evolution.
Okay, so wait a minute. You're not familiar with the historical relevance between evolutionism and communism, then? Let me refresh your memory a little. Okay, Frederick Engels. Let me refresh your Engels. Frederick Engels, 1820-1895, said, Darwin did not know what bitter satire he wrote on mankind when he showed that free competition, the struggle for existence, which is the economists celebrate as the highest historical achievement, is the normal state of the animal kingdom. Only conscious organization or social production in which production and distribution are carried on in a planned way can lift mankind above the rest of the animals. Okay, Frederick Engels stated this. He stated, just as Darwin discovered the law of evolution in organic nature, so Marx discovered the law of evolution in human history. Okay, and also in a letter to Lassalle, Karl Marx wrote in 1861 on January 16th. He said, I quote, Darwin's book is very important and serves me as the natural scientific basis for class struggle in history. One has to put up with the gross English mode of development, of course, speaking of his English way of writing and speaking. Despite all deficiencies, not only is there a death blow here for the first time to teleology, but in the natural sciences, it is a rational meaning of empirically explained. Okay, so this is the outlook, their outlook for their political eyes. Karl Marx, wait, one more, let me give you one more. Karl Marx wrote to Frederick Engels on December 19th, 1860, and said this, that Darwin's book contains the basis and natural history for our views. So don't tell me that there's not a direct relationship between evolutionism, atheism, and Marxist communism.
Right.
Right is.
The thing is, right. Eugenics could be described as selective breeding. Selective breeding has existed for millennia. It's totally unrelated to evolution.
That's true.
It's a complete red herring, Nephi. And any sane individual can see the absolute shit that you're talking.
Well, then you need to go back in history and convince Lassalle, Engels, and Marx that they were wrong about it. Because they saw it, and Darwin. And Darwin.
It's nonsense. It doesn't need evolutionary theory.
Well, that's where it started. Have you read on the origin of the species?
Give someone else the chance to speak.
Have you read on the origin of the species?
There's a
I've
name
read
missing.
A lot of it.
Well, you need to read it.
Actually, Moses.
There's a name missing. The actual founder of the eugenics movement or whatever was Francis Galton, not Charles Darwin.
Okay, well, I would suggest that you read On the Origin of the Species and Preservation of the Favored Races by Natural Selection before you comment
It's a
further.
complete red herring. It's an absolute red herring.
It won't be to you once you've read that.
Nephi, I have heard an argument that Moses was an evolutionist. He was taught in the ways of evolution. That was Moses.
That's rare.
Nev, can I briefly ask a question? Do you believe in atoms?
I don't see any purpose to.
I just
warrant that such an imbecilic question.
Well, I'm just interested to know if you believe in them or not.
If that's where you guys are going, then I'll just say I do. Okay.
Okay. Well,
all right. Have a good one.
Since you're an atomist, does that mean that you support nuclear weapons and Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Neffy just runs off, unfortunately.
No, he'll probably make a reply video.
Well, actually, that's actually it's made a spot. I want to address somebody in the comments. CTAH19 says, I wonder how many of the fundamentalist Christians who Nephi claims aren't whacknuts would jump on the bandwagon should a Christian reconstructionist theocracy appear. Now that's a very, very good point, because it's actually the essential thing that makes it happen.
Yep.
You see, because when the fundamentalists, they blackmail the moderate theists, because they say you might not disagree, you might not agree completely with what we plan to institute, but to not go along with it would be rejecting God. And that's how they sell it, because they sell it as saying, are you telling me you want to vote for an atheist? Or do you want to vote for somebody who represents God? So it's a very good question that CTH19 is asking.
Yeah, and also that I think even the extremists, if you like, or the theocracy proponent would not so much blackmail. Well, it would be a blackmail. You're right, but they would go along moderate lines, wouldn't they? To say, we can institute this, and they wouldn't. The outlandish, as in the book, the outlandish stuff isn't particularly mentioned to the moderates. It's the moderate things that they end up voting for that gets the rest in.
Well, and another thing, and all, let's bring it back to reality. The scary thing is that the author of that book actually has got it wrong so far, right? In the book, you get Sarah Palin, who inherits the presidency as vice president from dead McCain, and then you got her shadowy whack jobs who were pushing it and that, and then it starts via the House and the Senate. And then this guy was the shadowy one. He takes over the presidency. But in the book, the last domino to fall is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's like really trying to hold all this back, like a last bulwark. But the scary thing is, and this is something that the author of that book didn't envisage, is that it looks like the Supreme Court's going to fall a lot quicker than he imagined. Because just recently, I read something just this week, as soon as that election had taken place, which basically said that they're going to, the Republicans, now that they've got control of the House and Senate, are going to absolutely block any of Obama's appointments to the Supreme Court in the next 2 years, until Obama's gone. So it's basically no new appointments, or ones that are going to be what's the word? I can't remember what it is. But anyway,
or approved. Yeah.
I can't think of the right word. Facilitating to the religious right.
Yep.
So if you tip the balance, I mean, you've already got like is it Samuel Alito, Antonin Scalia. I mean, Antonin Scalia has already said that the freedom of religion in the Constitution is not freedom from religion. He actually come out with that as bold as brass. So he's basically saying that the Constitution presupposes a creator. So it's saying that if you hold the Constitution to be this great document, then you're presupposing a God. And it all goes back to this: you don't get those rights under that Constitution unless you presuppose the God. And when these they've already tried it. There was in one of the Bible Belt states there was an atheist couple went to a courthouse to get married, and the I don't know if the judge told them that they couldn't get married because they were atheists.
Yeah, it was the notary, I think. Yeah, it was the notary.
Yeah. They eventually went somewhere. I mean, it was quickly resolved, but it's still scandalous. Somebody went and found another.
Yeah, but they're being the courthouse is being sued.
Yeah. It's scary, and once state level politicians latch on to the idea of pre-sup, that isn't going to be fact checked.
And all these little things, it's like poking it with a stick to see what the reaction is going to be. It's testing the water, isn't it, in various places, various areas.
So
one of the traditional words is trial balloon.
Yeah.
What's the name of the college, Wayne? Just out of
Patrick Henry.
Patrick Henry College, right?
There's an excellent documentary on YouTube about it. It's oh, by the way, you know the homeschool movement. Do you know whose idea that were?
Go on.
Rushdoony. Yeah, so the Patrick Henry College. I mean, you've got like Liberty University, Oral Roberts. You've got all these.
Yeah, but Patrick Henry is the worst, honestly.
Patrick Henry is see, the thing is,
can you remember the name of the website that Scott Terry's? Some of the stuff on there where hasn't he got connections in that?
It's to do with American Vision, Crown Rights and American Vision, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what we're going to say. Right. So, at present, so they've taken the House, they've taken the Senate, and let's just say they tip the balance in the Supreme Court. Then all you need is a Trojan horse in the White House. I'm not so what you could. I'm not saying you're going to have a president to die. All you do is you have a president who people are actually voting for, but this is why I need to keep an eye on the VP candidates.
Well, like I said, this is really a moment for the Republicans to lose rather than win, politically speaking, because if history is a teacher, they screwed it up when they had this situation last time around. So I think this is really Obama's to win, or at the very least just to endure. I'm not certain that the Republicans are actually going to get the presidency in another 2 years.
Well,
I think that it could be that we get another Democratic president.
Allow me to give you an idea of what they're doing with the voting rights, which, as you might imagine, their usual disenfranchisement and so on tactics are strongly in play. The link is coming up. The state offices pertinent to, I guess, managing the voting process have been swept essentially by Republicans quite strongly, and those have been used with some aggressiveness to disenfranchise en masse and so on. And frankly, they're in charge of the quote-unquote counting process as well. And need we remind ourselves that it's not who votes, but who counts the votes. So we are in
I'm
trouble.
I'm not gonna delve into that. We're thinking, I just don't see any evidence of it coming true. I'm not saying that there aren't problems with the voting, the counting of the votes, etc. But I don't think it's going to be that close. And if it is, then we'll see the truth of the matter and who's being the corrupt person or not, the corrupt party. But I think that honestly, if the Republicans are true to their word in their kind of Tea Party politics, I don't think that they're going to win the presidency in another 2 years. I just think that the mood of the nation is going to swing against them. You can look at this more as a protest vote rather than a swing of the entire nation to the right. I think that the numbers actually show the contrary. I mean, Texas is actually worried that the president for the presidential vote that it's actually going to go blue the first time since the early 1990s or something like that. So I don't think that necessarily the Republicans are actually going to win the presidency this time around. They may.
Was no swing.
I don't know, but
There was no swing. The change wasn't a change in opinion. It was a change in the voting tactics. I mean, Texas, for instance, is instituting misogynistic rules against name changes, so that women who have married and so on will be disenfranchised en masse because the gender gap in the 2012 election was so large. Right? That's the response.
I've heard of these things, but I don't think that the Republicans are going to get that much of an overwhelming vote unless Obama screws up so badly. But I just don't see that happening. I mean, it's not that I'm not concerned, but and it's not that it's not worth watching and doing all we can. But I don't see the reason to hit the panic button just yet.
They don't have the votes to begin with. They're suppressing the contrary votes and reapportioning, both the Electoral College and House of Representatives and so on to, tilt it all in their direction, and redistricting more locally to disenfranchise on that level too. So, I mean, this is not a mystery how they're getting it without the numbers.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that there's only so much that they can do without it being completely transparent and people having a general outcry. And in that case, they're really going to lose the election in a major wave. I mean, it's just, they tried it. They actually did try with Romney. There was a lot of foul play on Romney's side, but it didn't work. And I'm just not sure that it's going to work this time around either. I just... I'm not panicking yet. Is all I'm saying.
Well, for me, I have to worry about these types instituting Levitical law. If
I know, and I might be moving back in another several months, so I have to worry about it too. It's not that it's not going to affect me if I move back, which I might be doing, but. Again, I have a fairly blasé take on politics in Washington D.C. Maybe it's just because I saw so much while I was there, but I just think that it's not time to panic yet. It just isn't. It's time to still be concerned, but it's always time to be concerned. I don't see it changing.
I think one of the things you have to watch out for, though, over the next couple of years, is they might keep their mouth shut for so long, but I can see it coming. They're gonna want blasphemy recriminalising. The religious right are gonna want that.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Sometime.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
It's same in the UK. The Muslims are you pretty much. You can't criticize Islam without being called a racist.
Well, you know my thoughts on it mesh with yours fairly much to a T. So yeah.
I mean, the Muslims have got far more protection than such as Christians have in this country in terms of criticism. I mean, for instance, like we talk about the great debate on YouTube. So how come it's all Christians? And you're not debating with Muslims. Well, the Muslims don't seem to engage.
Right.
But the thing is, it's probably a good job that they don't, because whereas when you argue with a fundy or a creationist and you tell them they're talking bollocks, right, they'll just say, "Oh, you're going to hell," right? I guarantee that if you argue with a Muslim on the Quran and Allah, they will go run into the law saying you offended them. Because there's a peculiar law in this country, the Malicious Communications Act.
Right.
And they run to that. They run to that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a surprise Pat Condell hasn't been arrested yet.
Yeah, I am really surprised.
I know, me too.
Had his collar felt.
I've been a fan of his ever since he started making videos, and I still am. And yeah, I've wondered a few times. I think that he's just too high profile to actually do anything about.
Given that there are 3 from the UK and 1 from Israel, you know, also heavily commenting on, well, what's going on in the U.S. You know, is there some way these kind of things in the U.S. would have a international impact?
Well, that's. I'm glad you asked that, Nadia, because that's why I'm interested in the subject.
Yeah.
Same here.
Because the thing is, right, for whether you like it or not, America affects everything.
Yeah.
We've already had this in 2008. Lehman Brothers and all this, and subprime mortgages. America shagged up the world's economy, and then other bad decisions with overspending in the British government made it worse for us than many other European countries. The thing is, if we have a vested interest in keeping America on an even keel, because it's all about, for me, very selfish person, down to my livelihood. So I want America healthy, so that my livelihood doesn't suffer over here. Because if America goes tits up, it'll go tits up for us.
And Wayne, that is exactly why it was so sad that the British Empire dissolved. Because there's nobody else around to do the heavy work when America goes down. I'm filled with chagrin at the dissolution of the British Empire. I really am.
It was far from perfect.
I know, but still, you know, I still feel as if right now there could be a use for it. It's a shame.
Is there any chance America could rejoin the British Empire? We could use the NHS, you know.
Well, there's a lot. Have you seen that meme on the internet? That it's often attributed to Stephen Fry or no, John Cleese, sorry, but it's thoroughly debunked by Snopes. It was a random pop-up meme about a decade ago, and it's an invitation for America to return to the crown.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
That they must like say, all taxes are backdated to the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Tea Party. You must change you must start putting "yous" back in your words. Well, it's quite funny. I love it.
I've seen it. I don't know who actually wrote it, but it is quite smart. And there are major problems in the UK as well, and the EU as a whole. So I wouldn't say that America rejoining would be necessarily a good thing, but
this is why I would argue with my friends the other night, and they were on the typical working class Northerners. Oh, we need to get out of Europe, and I'm like, go and take your head for a shit. What happens with America? We're nothing without Europe. If America starts to decline, we need Europe.
Yeah, I agree. I as much as I have problems with the EU, the foundational idea of a union of states was a good one. The problem is they took it to a political level, which was a bad one. But on an economic level, it was actually fairly good. They screwed it up with the politics of it all, and that's the real problem, right?
That's the way it was sold to the British public back in the late 60s, early 70s, that it was going to be a common market. And then,
but even Maastricht in the 1990s was mostly about economics, was not so much about politics. It was after Maastricht that they started on their political bent, which was frankly just a disaster.
We were tricked.
Well, if you watch Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, I mean, they allude to it in the 80s so well, so perfectly, and they actually give the proper position of the British. You know, when Sir Humphrey Appleby says, you know, we entered into it to make a right mess of it, to make a real pig's breakfast out of it, to set the Germans against the French and the French against the Italians. That's what we want. You know, but that's really what it should be at this point, I think, because it's now it's just a mess.
I would say the political union probably, or not probably, definitely needs to precede the economic.
Well, the thing about Europe, we mentioned the Germans and the French, and that's this is what the people, the UKIP idiots make the mistake of, is that they say, oh, Germany didn't win in 1945, but they're doing it now by getting most powerful in Europe.
Yeah.
If we're not in Europe, and it's not going to happen. Germany's got too much infrastructure to go that route. But let's just say if it becomes like an empire of Europe, Germany and France. What sort of situation are we in if we're outside it? We're basically 1939 all over again. We're standing alone. So we need to be in them. We need to be in.
I agree. I think again. I understand the UKIP vote from a few months ago. I wouldn't have voted UKIP, but I understand the frustration and why people did, and I don't. As a protest vote to send UKIP to the EU, I do not completely object to it.
I like the idea, bro. I like the idea of UKIP being European Euro MP.
Right. I wouldn't vote, Nigel Farage in any local election whatsoever.
Exactly.
But I think in terms of the EU, I
think they're the perfect check and balance to be in Europe, in the European Parliament. But in terms of constitutional politics in the UK, no.
I do have to say something though. It was to their credit and to Farage's credit that they did not want to sit with the Front National. That was, frankly, a mark of integrity, because they could have gained so much more power had they done so, but they didn't. And
sorry, what was that? I didn't quite catch that.
That Farage doesn't sit with the Front National from France. And that's to his credit and to UKIP's credit. They are not the extremists that people have made them out to be. I don't agree with them. I think they have a huge amount of nutty ideas that are crazy, frankly. But it's to their credit they did not ally with the Front National.
Even though I'm American, I'll briefly apologize for Nikki Sinclair.
I think, like Wayne says, you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to be part of something to influence it. It's a bit like the joke, isn't it, with the guy the Christian that on his knees every night for the Monday to Friday, praying to God to win the lottery every night. Please God, look, I need the money for this, and I'll do some good with it and charity. And every night he's praying. And Saturday night comes Friday night comes, the night before the lottery, and he's praying harder than he's ever prayed. And eventually, a voice booms from above and says, "Meet me halfway and buy a fucking ticket."
Yeah. I know that one. It's a good one, actually. But yeah, I think, look, I have no problem with the EU on an economic level. It can use some serious fixing up. But the problem is with the EU on a political level. That, I think, is an impossibility. And it's just... it's wishful thinking, frankly. You cannot erase the history of 2,000 years, basically, of European history, of all these independent borders, of all these different cultures. It is not like the United States at the formation. It is a completely different entity. and it just doesn't work. I mean, you've seen the constitution of the EU. It's such a piece of crap. It's a huge legal document that's an entire book, because you have so many different identities, so many different problems to address, and none of them really get addressed. They're just glossed over. These problems are glossed over with this quote-unquote constitution. So it doesn't work on a political level, but it does work on an economic level, or at least it could. And I think the problem really is that we need to take the political level out of it, or seriously reduce it, and then just deal on it with an economic basis, and then work from there.
That's the entire problem, though. The economic basis is just essentially you disempower things when you remove the right of seigniorage, and
I understand
they can't function. You have to have political first.
Yeah, no. The problem is because the political is trying to supersede the local, each country's politics, and it just won't work. This is not like the American states at the foundation of the country, of the United States. It just doesn't work in the same way.
I think the market idea worked originally, the common
market
trading, but the problem with the economic part of it now is you've got the bigger countries who don't want to forego their own issues, and they're basically shafting countries like Spain, Greece, up the backside for the sake of it's a bit like the bigger countries don't want to help the other ones out.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, Greece didn't exactly act in a responsible way, and they acted incredibly irresponsibly, and so did Spain, and this is the real problem. So again, you can't deal with each of these states as an equal in that respect, in that sphere. It just won't work. You have to have some sort of commonality, and Europe doesn't exactly have a commonality when it comes to politics. And politics.
Let me tell you an interesting little story. I'm a motorcyclist, I'm a biker. And there was a big kerfuffle a couple of years ago because there were these proposals put in by Europe to really tighten up on vehicle standards. And one of the proposals, I don't know if it's coming in or not, was that basically all new motorbikes have got to have ABS fit to the standard. Now, the thing is, who owns the ABS market? Bosch Motortronic of Germany. So the lobbyists,
You ever see the TV series from 20 years ago, Chef, on BBC? I really love that one. And the food inspector, the EU passes a new law that wooden chopping boards are illegal. So he goes in, and the food inspector comes in and takes away all the wooden chopping boards. They have to replace them with plastic. But even worse is there's no more real Stilton, because unpasteurized Stilton is deemed illegal by the EU. So it affects people on the ground level.
But also it's very selective though. I mean, like unpasteurized milk might be illegal, but yet again they get special. France gets special exemption for Roquefort, which is unpasteurized sheep's cheese.
It actually gets exemption for most cheeses, I think, or for all cheeses. But because when I was in France, I would pretty much only eat unpasteurized cheese. In fact, a good cheese to me is unpasteurized. There are certain exceptions, but yeah, you can't have a good. And that includes Stilton, by the way. I absolutely love Stilton, and a pasteurized Stilton is nowhere near as good. I mean, a real Stilton to me is a joie de vivre. And I love a real Stilton. And you just can't make Stilton with pasteurized milk. It just doesn't work. So, yeah, I oppose the EU's stupid little regulations like that. I mean, the whole place is falling apart, and they're sitting around legislating, the size of sausages or cucumbers.
Well,
or
it's like that
something.
old saying, isn't it? Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. It's just a disaster, frankly. I mean, I really support the common market. I think that's a fabulous idea. Keep that idea. Maybe keep some sort of political undertones to it. The free borders in one sense, and other things that make it more of a community. But it's not the same as the United States, and it will not be the same as the United States.
Going back to on about the United States, I couldn't understand what the point with Nephilim were trying to make about these ideologies and changing that, because they were talking about an autocracy, i.e. Tsarist Russia, being changed by an oligarchy, i.e. Bolshevism. Now, where what you got in America, you're talking about what's the word? I don't know how do you describe America's system? We're a constitutional monarchy, and how is America described? It's
Democratic Republic.
Yeah, republic. Yeah,
Republic.
I couldn't think of the word then. And the change what we're scared of would be a Democratic Republic being changed into an oligarchic theocracy. Now the thing is with the Russian example, they've got no rights in first place. Whereas with the US, what you're talking is something that is flawed, but could be America could be so much of a utopia. It's untrue.
And a lot of people think it was, and thought it was in the 1950s and the 1960s. I mean, America was really the country to look up to in so many respects. I mean, American engineering, American cars, American fashion, American movies, etc. That's when the American culture pervaded the entire world. Was in the 1950s and the 1960s, which had never happened before. It was fairly isolationist before that.
Let me introduce a concept here. Did you ever watch the Flintstones?
Of course.
Right. Did you know that the Flintstones
are based on the Honeymooners? Yeah.
It operated on many levels.
Yeah.
On one level, it's a children's cartoon. On another level, it's a satire on consumerism. On another level, it's basically wanting to make Americans feel good about their way of life, about their consumerism. So it's satirizing it on one way, and basically saying America is fantastic because look at all these appliances that you householders have got.
Right.
Now, when people in Britain watching Flintstones, they're watching Stone Age people with labour-saving appliances that we didn't get until 20 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, people in Britain didn't have fridge freezers units until the late 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, when television, for instance, we got that 1950 something or another. They got colour television in America in the 40s, hadn't they?
We didn't have a colour telly till about mid-70s.
When I was in England and Belgium, we in the 70s we had black and white TV. I didn't have a color TV until I moved to America in 1980. In Britain things were a lot more sparse. Frankly, I remember that very well. Absolutely.
I mean,
there's one level you've forgotten, Wayne, is that the other level the Flintstone is seen as it's seen as a documentary series by creationists.
Yeah, I know. I knew somebody was going to mention it. Yeah, but that's so true in a sense. But yeah, look, in the 1950s and 1960s, American culture was pervasive, and that was the first time it really invaded the rest of the world. And it hasn't really stopped since, and I can understand why people got frustrated with that after a while, because everything that they used to know, all the traditions, were slowly being erased or eaten away by American culture, American pop culture. But that has diminished in a lot of ways. I mean, you have other cultures now that are as pervasive in a lot of ways. But the problem is that many of those cultures, the modern culture, is based somewhat on the American cultures of the 50s and 60s.
Well, Quantum's wanting to take it off, to close the show now, so I'll give a final thought. Wake up, America, and don't vote for idiots.
Yeah, I didn't see the side chat. Sorry, Quantum. I'm on my fourth. I'm almost done my fourth glass of whiskey, so I'm a little bit more loquacious than usual.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we should finish up now. As usual, if you want an invite to the next one, make sure you add my page with this avatar on. That's about everything. Thanks everyone for joining. It's been quite a good session, I think. It's actually been the most popular one yet for some surprising reason. But anyway, thanks everyone. Bye.
It's all due to me, Quantum.